All right, let's go. Nadine, champion, welcome to Roll with the Punches.
Thanks. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited. Now, I was just late to our meeting. Let me just dog myself in. I was late to our meeting and I was going to come back. So this morning before I went to walk my doggo, I watched your TED Talk again.
Oh, cool.
And it made me quite emotional actually. And it made me tear up before you even teared up at the end. And I was like, oh, isn't this interesting? But it brought up a lot for me. It brought up a lot of little things and I really loved it. And I was like, I'm definitely going to watch that again when I get home before we jump on for a chat. But I didn't get a chance to because I was late.
That's all right. Yeah, I hear that a lot in people, especially people who don't usually cry. And then they watch that talk and it's not all crying, but it's, there's a moment at the end that's pretty real. And, it tends to have an effect on people. And I guess maybe it is people who don't usually cry who are really surprised, especially when it happens more than once, if you watch it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's bizarre. When I go and do talks to companies and things, like I play that little piece at the end and I just watch the vibe in the room change where everyone's kind of in their daily mode and then it gets really real.
Yeah.
So it's wild, the effect.
I loved it.
It's pretty real for me too.
Yeah, I could tell. It resonated a lot with me. I felt like, so I'll tell you what came up. I felt like when I reached out to you and we connected, I was super excited because I was like, oh my God, it's another me. And
I felt the same way.
She's a fighter and she talks about resilience and this is awesome. And I listened to and I watched the video and I was like, there was a little bit of what do you call it? Like a lot of my own insecurity came up. So I was watching you and I was like, it's like watching me but better. And it's like, it was funny. I just found it interesting. It was like this emotional feeling where I felt insecure and I felt all the stuff come up where it was like the same but different.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was to give the people listening a little bit of background. I had this chance to be the closing speaker for TEDx Sydney, which was at the Opera House in 2015. Never done any public speaking before. That was my first go.
Wow. What?
It was in front of 2,500 people and it was a year after I'd had cancer. So I was feeling pretty unsteady in lots of ways. Like I was still me, but I was rocked completely. And I got a chance to talk about something. So I decided to talk about my relationship with my coach, my sensei, a man named Benny the Jet Eukides. And I decided to share one thing that he had taught me that had really helped me in my life and in my treatment that I'd just gone through, which was this idea of 10 seconds of courage. And I explained to people at the end of the talk that, what I've learned as a teacher and a coach myself is you can know all of the concepts and you can get all the ideas, but they don't mean anything unless you put them into practice. And that's where I think getting in the ring is a real metaphor for life, because you find out the difference between the idea of it and what it's like on the pads and what you can do in the gym. And then there's reality. So I said to everyone after I'd given this speech, like everything I just said means nothing unless you actually do the thing, the 10 seconds thing. And so I decided to show them what that would look like in that moment for me. And it was really challenging because I was someone who had walked around 30 plus years with my armor on, being a fighter, being, like, don't mess with me, and I took my armor off to do that talk. And that ended up being the thing that really changed my life. And I think that's what gets people. They go, oh, this is, I decided to be who I am at home in my jammies publicly for the first time ever. And just really show people what it looks like in my head. And that is the thing I think that people go, oh, but that's what it's like in my head too. Or something kind of maybe similar, that it just hits something, eh?
There's a couple of things I love about that. Well, one is your first talk was a 2,500 audience TED talk. And for
it felt
that
like
talk,
fighting.
Yeah, right. And for that talk, you thought, I'm going to take my armor off and show up.
When you've lost everything, you've got nothing left to lose. So I felt like I'd been rocked so hard by, you know, I'd always been such a physical person. I'd relied on my strength and being a fairly dynamic sort of person. And then I got Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I spent, you know, 6 months getting treatment. And then the following year was when things sort of fell apart for me. So I used all my, you know, strength in inverted commas to get me through the treatment. And apparently it's really common. Like the second I rang the bell for my last radiation, it was on the 2nd of January 2014, and I started crying, and I felt like I just fell to bits after that. And that's what they don't tell you when stuff like that happens to you going through treatment. But it's the same thing as, you know, people get divorced, or they, you know, they're working really hard and then they get retrenched, and it's just something that happens in life that rocks you. You know, and then you feel unsteady, and I wasn't sure about who I was anymore. Like, who did I have the right to tell myself I was anymore in my own head, let alone outside in the world? But I decided to take a really big swing. But, you know, as we go on in this, I'll tell you when I decided to do that and what it looked like. But yeah, it was when the chips are down, you're either going to accept it and stay down, or, you know, you're going to make a decision to take one last big swing.
Do you feel like there's a moment or a part of time where you realise where something comes left field, like your illness, like your health, and because I resonate with this, where you go, fuck off, I've been resilient, you know, where you kind of realise that you're hiding behind the facade of resilience and you're not really ready to be resilient if it's out of your hands. So it's like I step into discomfort, I step into this, I step into that, I hold my head high, I'm all about getting uncomfortable, I'm all about resilience, and then one more thing comes along and you're like, fuck off, world. And then you go, maybe there's like a disclaimer over my resilience, you know, when it's not in my control, it's different.
Yeah, I mean, Sensei Benny, he, like my teacher, he always, you know, he's a real famous guy. He's a world champion for about 30 years. He's like a martial arts master. So he's two different things at the same time. He's in Hollywood movies. He's a big deal guy, right?
Yeah.
He always talked to me about just being human.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's a bit like Yoda, you know, I joke with people, but he, you know, he would always say, don't put me on a pedestal like those ones do. Like, just let me be human, because you know, you have to allow me and everybody else to make mistakes. And I always wondered when I was younger why he would say that, because he wasn't making mistakes in my eyes. He wasn't letting me down. So I felt confused. But as I got older, I realized it was really powerful, because you can't be resilient all the time. You can't be brave all the time. You can't be healthy all the time. You can't be focused on your work all the time and kicking goals. You know, you can't win them all in a way. So it's almost like a pressure release valve. Just because you are that thing a lot of the time doesn't mean you're cancelled out if you're not that thing some of the time.
I love that.
You know, we call it the I am concept. It's something he taught me that, you know, it's one of my favorite things to do with people when I do mindset coaching with them, because it reveals to us how self-critical we are. You know, like, well, I wasn't brave that one time, so I must be a coward. And because our brains have a negative bias, we attach to that instead of just going, oh, evidence would show that 89.5% of the time I am brave or resilient. But that other 10.5%, you know, I get a pass for being human. But we tend to attach to the 10% and go, oh, that means that the other stuff doesn't count.
Yeah, so true. Hey, how old were you? When did your martial arts journey start?
I was 10, so I'm 45 now. So it's been a very long time. Yeah, I was a little kid, and you know, it's funny. I showed a picture in that talk, and it's in my book too. That you know, I'm like a little yellow belt. I haven't been doing it very long, and I'm making my little kicking face as I'm kicking at the camera. I just laugh. I was like, oh my god, I still make that face.
What was it about? Was that something that your parents kind of suggested, or what drew you into the sport? What was the appeal about it?
My parents weren't stoked about me doing it, to be honest. My brother was getting bullied, so they took him to martial arts, and I got to sit there and watch. And I lasted about 20 minutes of vibrating on the sidelines going, I need to do that, you know. So they did let me do it. But, you know, I think they were having the usual like, oh, she's a bit of a tomboy. Like, oh, we don't want her to go in there and start hitting people. That's only going to make it worse. But, you know, I was just being who I was, and I was a physical little kid who, you know, wanted to run around and jump on the trampoline, then climb the tree, then do all that stuff. So being physical was such a part of my identity anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then around that time, the Karate Kid came out. So I didn't stand a chance, really. It was going to happen one way or the other.
Yeah. And what was your first martial art?
I started doing Taekwondo.
Yeah,
so,
okay. And you competed in that?
No. So we weren't allowed, interestingly enough. We had to take an oath, this was a long time ago, that we would only ever do one martial arts style, and we would never show it off, and we would never compete.
Wow.
So it was very traditional values. So I was okay with it at the time. I just wanted to learn it and be good at it. And, you know, I was really enjoying it as it was. But, you know, I didn't really understand all of the different aspects of it, but I did get that real sense of the traditional, which I liked, you know, that it's a martial art. So yes. I got attached to the art part of it and the spirit of it, I think, from the very beginning. And that's always been quite important to me. Even when I've gone off into the sport, in like ring sports, combat sports, I've always stayed a traditional martial artist in spirit, I guess.
What's the oath about not doing any other martial arts?
Well, this is how it used to be.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I didn't know how I felt about it either. You know, back in the days,
clearly,
you know, the idea was, you know, to be the master of one thing, you know, rather than just participate in a lot of things. So, you know, if you were going to do an art, you should do it from beginning to end for your whole life, rather than just dabble in this and dabble in that. Otherwise, you never reach that next level. So, you know, and I guess also the martial arts at that time, this is before the UFC and mixed martial arts and all that stuff, were very nationalistic as well. So there was, you know, some from Okinawa, Japan, some from Korea, some from Thailand, you know, all very different. So there was a lot happening. And I was very happy to see, you know, that martial arts became so much more universal and joined together. And, you know, Sensei Benny was one of the first ones. Like Bruce Lee, you know, they were around at the same time. Sensei Benny was a little bit younger, who became a mixed martial artist from the very beginning. He started at the age of 4 with boxing and judo. So, you know, he was a mixed martial artist from the jump, and he just turned 69 the other day. So he's got double my experience. I'm still learning from him, but he's still learning too. He's very much about keeping the white belt mindset, and, you know, he's hungry to learn. If you can teach him something, he's up for it. I love that about him. Very humble.
Yeah. God, what a privilege to train with someone like that.
Yeah, I know. I sort of pinch myself sometimes to think how lucky I've been and how different my life would have been if I never met him. So, you know, my dad passed away when I was 20, and I just started doing his style of martial arts in Australia with someone else when I was 19. So I was just coming into this thing, and then I met him in my very early 20s. So I developed this. He's like my dad in a way, but he's very much my sensei. Like, he'll come to Australia, not lately, but he'll come to Australia and he'll stay at my house, and you know, he'll get up in the morning and I'll say, "Morning, sensei." Like, there's still that respect there, even though I'll give him a hug after. You know,
I love that.
There's a traditional element that makes it beautiful. And for some people who'd resist against that, you know, respect makes them feel funny, but to me, it makes the relationship deeper.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise he's just like everybody else, you know, and he deserves, like, in the changes he's helped me make in my life and the things he's taught me, he deserves, you know, some extra respect, in my opinion. Doesn't hurt me to give respect.
Yeah. I love that. When did you step into the ring and compete? When and why?
Oh, not for a long time, you know. I became interested I guess I started doing his style of martial arts because I got my butt kicked in real life. So
yeah,
I was.
Tell us about that. That looks pretty gruesome.
Yeah, I was working on the door of a bar when I was, like 18, 19, and having built my identity around being like a tough chick, and getting into some situations. I got into a fight with a couple of people, and there was a lot of hair, scalp ripping out and eye gouging going on, and it was a dirty street fight, and I still had a martial arts mindset and I hadn't been taught the difference between martial arts and fighting. So I got a big reality check. But the beautiful thing was, instead of it crushing my identity and me giving up martial arts completely because it didn't work anymore, I went and found a style that was, it was a combination. So Sensei Benny's martial arts called Yukido-kan. It's a combination of 9 different styles. So I thought, I'll just go train in that for a bit and see what I like, and then I'll pick a different style. But, from the first lesson, I was really interested in how all the martial arts joined together, and not having a limitation on what you could learn, I guess. So I was really interested in the broad sort of part of it. And, I started training in that, and then I started to get what I thought was kind of good at it. So I went over to the States where Sensei Benny lives. He's from LA, and I realized I wasn't so good. I wasn't as good as I thought I was, getting in the ring with professional fighters and stuff. So in my little pond, I thought I was pretty, getting the hang of it. And then I'll never forget the first time I saw somebody like a pro hit a heavy bag. I'll never forget it. I'd never heard that sound before. I'd never seen the bag move like that before. And I went, whoa, like I'm at the very beginning. Even though I had experience behind me, I didn't have that kind of experience behind me. So, it was a funny thing. I started doing sort of different martial arts competitions. I've competed in lots of different things.
Yeah.
And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I'm starting to set my dream. Originally, I wanted to go and fight pankration, or end up fighting in Japan with like a mixed martial arts vibe. And then I got the worst injury I've ever had, which was bulging discs in my neck. I got a training injury one day, and that affected my direction and what I could do, because I couldn't grapple on the ground anymore. I couldn't balance on my head. I couldn't take impact. So I couldn't get hit in the head anymore. And that was I was about 24, I think, when that happened. So I had to steer away from any kind of heavy contact for many years. And then I guess I was about, like a surgeon said to me, look, if you get hit in the head, you're going to have your spine fused and all this stuff. So I went sort of back into the martial arts direction and away from competing in the ring.
Yeah.
And then I got to I went overseas for a few years. I came back. I got to about 30, and I went, if I die without doing this, I will have lived a life of regret. So I need to come up with a strategy where I can compete in the ring without getting hit in the head. Seems like a logical plan. So I thought, because I can't not do it even though the surgeon had said this, and it affected my training, and I haven't slept anywhere but my back really for the last 20 years. But, when something happens that affects you so much and it affects your ability to do the thing you love, it was tricky, and I found ways around it. But I always had that dream of like, could I do that? Could I do that thing that I saw everyone doing when I was younger? And to be honest, when I first started doing the contact, like going from light contact in martial arts to medium to hard full contact was a big shock. So it took me some years to digest that as well.
So you competed with that bulge disc?
Yeah. I even competed in Thai boxing, where they're trying to grab your head and knee you in the face. So it was crazy. But, at the time I knew, like, I'd had like a whiplash test done and things where they'd measured my strength, and I had the strength. If you grab the back of my head and pull it down, I had the ability to resist, like the strength of a little kid, because of the injuries in my neck. So I knew that if they grab my head and pull it down, I could barely resist. So
it changed your strategy.
I didn't want to get kneed in the face. That was, I thought that would be a bad way to get knocked out.
Yeah.
But, it was hard in New South Wales to get kickboxing fights. So I had to fight Thai boxing. So the first state title that I had the chance to compete for was a Thai boxing title.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would have rather there was no kneeing in the face, but, you know, that would have suited my injury better. But, you know, the opportunity came and I decided to take it. And I just, you know, Sensei Benny was all about strategy in the ring, you know, and he told me from the beginning, don't take the impact. Like he said, if you want to be a prize fighter one day, when I was really young, he said, if you want to be a prize fighter one day, do not take the impact because it'll shorten your career. Spoken by someone who'd made his living his whole life as a professional fighter. So he was like, you know, it's great to be tough, but if you get hit too much, you'll end up punchy and you'll have a short career, you know, or you'll end up so damaged that, you know, it'll affect your ability to perform. I liked that idea. I thought that was smart. He had a very smart approach to competing. So he'd always taught me about defense, head movement, footwork, you know, as a big part of the art of it, not just your offense and being tough. So he talked to me a lot about strategy, and I knew going in there that I had to be really focused on not just what I was going to do to them, but what I was going to stop them from doing to me.
How do you think? Well. Yeah. How much did you compete from that point? How long for? How many?
God, I don't even know. It was a few years there. Like I think I had my last fight, got to be 10 years ago now. I think I was about 35-ish. Yeah, you know, and I got a lot out of it. You know, it was so interesting because it was like I was one of those stress head fighters. You know, some people just love it and they're like, can't wait for it to be there, and then they're having it and then it's great and they're really happy afterwards. I was one of those fighters who would get so stressed out. I'd barely sleep for months, so I never had problem making weight. I was just like jittery little thing by the time I got to the weigh-in. You know, and then I would fight, and I had such high expectations of myself and so much on the line, just as far as if I zig when I should have zagged, I'm going to get injured here. So there was a real weight to it behind the scenes for me that people didn't know about, let alone winning, losing, all that stuff. So I had to really consider what I was doing. I knew I couldn't go fight every month and, you know, still be able to turn my head. So, you know, I took the opportunities when they came up, but I was one of those people when, you know, when it was over, I wouldn't be riding a high forever and it was the best thing ever. I would get that real come down.
Yeah.
I would be more relieved than happy a lot of the time. Just relieved that it went well, relieved that the strategy worked, relieved that it was over, and also happy. You know, there's a lot happening for me that wasn't just, yes, that was awesome.
Yeah, I want to dig deeper on that. That it intrigues me. What were you getting out of it? It's funny because as you talk about that, when I often, when I've been competing, I would often reflect and think, what the hell? Like, this is a weird sport, because if I'm honest, the majority of the time, I feel like I'm shit. I am unhappy with my performance. I am self-criticizing a lot. I'm, you know, it's hard, it's brutal, it's confronting. The joy in the moment is scarce, but then there's these moments that overcome. So it would always interest me when I'd look at it from that standpoint. I'm like, this is funny because I love this sport more than anything. I have so much passion for it, but at the same time, I am well aware that the actual joy in the moment, like if we're talking about people that do something and enjoy it, you know, it's like everyone goes, how are you motivated? How do you stay motivated to get fit? It's like the same thing in the boxing ring. Like, I'm nervous when I go. I'm nervous when I spar. I feel like an imposter and like I'm the worst person in and I've told this story before, but even when I have performed well in a sparring session, I'll be sitting down overthinking it and contemplating, and then I'll be told, mate, what is wrong with you? That's the best you've ever sparred, and you put really good pressure on that person who's miles better than you, and like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, well, this is a shit sport. This is a shit sport. I've just done the best I've ever done, and it feels like I've done shit. So tell me about what you were getting out of the process that makes it worth the crap that it brings.
You know what I call it? Is the unequivocal truth. I was getting the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because like as an
Nailed it.
overthinker, as you know,
Yes.
as somebody who is geared towards being hard on themselves, you know, all of that stuff is part of life, you know, and I'm sure you relate to the biggest fight I ever had was the one in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
I would go compete with her physically, but the battle I had in the dressing room or in the last 2 months getting ready for this was much harder than dealing with her physically.
Mm.
It's a mirror,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that truth is what I was really seeking. So Sensei Benny always talked about the external, which is the kicks, punches, physical part of it, the push-ups, the sit-ups, the all of the physical grind.
Mm.
That's great. That's part of how we communicate with each other. It's what part of what you and I already know things about each other because we do the same thing. I can tell straight away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I know you, you know. So there's that external part, which is the means of connection and communication. The thing that I started to really value over the years was the internal. That's the mental, the mindset part of it. That's what happens to your heart and your belief in yourself. And we call it a knowing. You know, what's your knowing about you? What do you really know? The unequivocal truth, not the stuff you tell yourself, not the stuff other people tell you, but what do you know? You know, and Sensei would say, what do you know for sure, for sure? Like, what is it really? Like, you know, you absolutely know it. And it's a mirror. And I found that internal development was the main reason I wanted to compete. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't about trophies and being better than other people and, you know, hitting people and all that stuff. It's all a part of it, but it was nowhere near as valuable to me as, can I face my fear? Can I perform this strategy with a great big threat in front of me? Can I perform when I'm sick? Can I perform when I'm injured? Can I perform with, the hardest one was having Sensei Benny in my corner for the first time, you know, can I perform in front of everyone I know, all the people that I teach, my friends, my family, my sensei right there, with an injury that means I'm like a little kid if you grab my head and pull it down. Can I do this? And, you know, there's that moment where you have to make a decision about who you are and what you are, what you're worth, what you're capable of, what you're made of. And then getting in the ring, whether it's sparring or fighting, is a way for you to find out the truth.
Nailed it. I love it. I talk about it a lot. I was 29 when I first raised my hand for a corporate boxing challenge. So it was 8 weeks. And I was just like, well, yeah, let's do this. Like, show off. This is cool. Everybody's going to come watch me. And obviously it over-delivered. And then there was this journey of a couple of years where I jumped in and I kept doing those. But under the surface, unbeknownst to myself, all this stuff, you know, like this stuff had started shifting. And I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I coming in here? Why does this place feel like home? Why do people ask me why I'm not scared of getting hit? And why aren't I scared of getting hit? And if I'm not scared of getting hit, what am I scared of? And those questions.
Yeah, that's your internal.
Oh, mate, Nadine, I was like, oh shit, I kind of wish I didn't start asking these questions because that, you know, it was like but the same reason that I kept stepping in to the ring because you said it before, it was my metaphor for life. And for 29 years, I hadn't even seen the me underneath the mask that I'd created. And I guess for me, there's always, even to this day, like I've just this week, to be honest, made the final decision that I'm not sparring anymore. I haven't competed for a couple of years, but I don't even want to spar anymore. It's just because of the unnecessary head trauma. And my defense isn't great. So, you know, I'm wearing.
Right on. I hear you. Yeah.
But unfortunately for me, I had someone introduce me to rock climbing, which has given me the same thing that to a degree, but in a different way that fighting did and sparring did. But it was like, if I choose to stop doing this, where's I need a mirror. I want a mirror. I always want to know because for 30 years, I was very good at believing the facade. And I don't want to just believe what my conscious mind might put together because it's safe and it sounds good and it's whatever. Like I want to get underneath that always. So that was my barometer for that. So I love that when you speak, I hear you say what I think in different ways, and I love that.
That's awesome, because it's a different lens to look at the same experience, right? And we have a shared experience. Like I know anyone who's gotten in the ring to do, I did some sparring with a woman that I trained for the first time last week, and again this week, just very light. But I watched her have that experience, and you know what that feels like. It's that moment of like, but hang on, why can't I do what I know how to do? And hang on, you just touched my face and now I'm mad. And even though it's all of the feelings that come with it. So having done what I've done, I know that the glory of it.
Yeah.
And the self-esteem and the pride that comes with it, and the hard work and discipline and all those good, happy feelings that are positive. But you also know the humility and the hard times, and, just feeling gutted by yourself. And, it's such a valuable, who would have thought, and it's so interesting to try to explain this to people who don't do what we do, that getting in the ring, which a lot of people look at as a very unintelligent thing to do, I get it, it can be such a massive vehicle for self-reflection and personal growth and, self-discovery. And that was why I did it. And, Sensei Benny always would say to me, Yukita-kan, or what we do, getting in the ring is only for the brave. And I thought in the beginning he meant you got to be brave enough to get in there and take a punch, give a punch, But what he meant was it's easier to get punched in the face. That hurts less, that's less challenging than to go there and really look at yourself. It takes an element of courage and bravery to be willing to really see yourself clearly, see yourself in all of your moments of vulnerability and courage and effort and risk, but also see yourself in those moments where, why am I like that? Why do I think like that? Why did I just act like that? And he was very good at deliberately holding up mirrors to me so I could see. And if you don't run, you stay long enough to get something out of it.
Yes.
He used to say to me, if you don't love it, you won't last. You have to love what you do, even though it's hard, because it is so hard. And a lot of people will only dip their toes in, or they'll get a little bit or whatever it is. But if you really love it, you'll stay long enough to get the main thing out of it. And I was just telling a story the other day to someone. They asked me a question, something I'd mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a speech in Queensland, and I'd mentioned something about something Sensei Benny had said to me in the corner of the fight, and I hadn't followed through on the conversation. So this lady emailed me and she's like, what did he say to you? And it speaks to what we were just talking about. I sat down in the middle of that first Thai boxing fight when he was in my corner. And it was a brutal fight. Like I broke my hand, I knocked her teeth out. Like it was just, it was a war. And it took me about 6 weeks to get over it. Like I was smashed afterwards. But so was she. So it was even. But it was such a brutal fight that halfway through the fight, I sat down on the stool and I said to Sensei Benny, like I was full of adrenaline. I looked at him and I said, who's winning? And he looked at me like, huh? Like it looked like alien. Like, why did you just ask me that? He just looked at me and he goes, why does it matter? And straight away in that moment, I realized I was caught up in the superficial part of it, in the who's winning, who's losing, who's going to get the bigger trophy, what's everyone going to think, am I doing okay, do you think I'm okay, adrenaline, normal reaction. And just by him looking at me like that and saying, why does it matter, he reminded me of everything he trained me for. Like, if you don't love it, you won't last. So he always used to tell me, we fight to express our love for what we do. Our love for ourselves and our love for what we do, which sounds so counterintuitive, but you love this thing. It's like a relationship, you love it, and it's a passionate thing, and you see it every day, and sometimes you hate it and it's mean to you, and it's this up and down thing, but it gives you so much, and it's almost a way of expressing it and showing yourself to yourself and showing yourself to everybody else. And he was like, that's why you do it. If you're doing it for a trophy, go do something that is easier. Win a trophy another way, you know. So it just reminded me, I'd forgotten about that story, you know. It reminded me why I did it. There was a much deeper meaning for me than winning stuff.
I love
it's great
that
to win,
story. Yeah.
but that's, you know, that's why the fighting, like, he always used to say to me he was a better teacher than a fighter, you know, and he was a pretty famous fighter. So I was like, really, you know, he's a very good teacher. And the beautiful thing for me is, like, I hear you about the sparring. I've gotten hit in the head enough times. I'm good. You know, the thing that I really love to do is teach. I've always loved teaching, and that's where I get so much out of. I get more out of teaching than I ever did out of competing. But competing was very important in itself. Yes. For expressing other things. Is very cathartic for me. But you know, the beautiful thing is I love teaching, and you know, unbeknownst to me, when I got sick and I couldn't teach people because I was exhausted and not well, and you know, I felt like this business that I built up had just come crashing down, and what am I going to do, and all this stuff. And then one of my students actually said to me, would you ever do a TEDx talk if you had the chance? And I was like, oh, I suppose so. Like, I like them. I'd watch them on, you know, the internet, but it never occurred to me to do one. And she was like, would you do one if you could? And I was like, yeah, I suppose so. And she goes, I think you'd be really good. And I was like, oh, thank you. I didn't know she was on the organizing committee for TEDx Sydney.
Wow.
So she put my name in the hat, and, you know, and they called me up, and I talked to this journalist for an hour on the phone about what we do. And I remember hanging up the phone thinking, I'm never going to hear from you again. And because I didn't understand that what I was doing one-on-one in the gym with people, physically, I was also giving them the internal, the mindset stuff, that was where the real, like, best bits were. And I knew it for myself, but I didn't realize that that was the thing that was valuable. So it took my student, Jess Miller, to see it and see the transfer. She worked in advertising and stuff. So she could see that in the corporate world, or the world in general, there would be value and transference of what we do in the gym to what people do in business in their lives. So yes, she saw it, she gave me the opportunity, and I just told the truth. And it's, you know, that gave me a whole new way of expressing my love for what I do. So I don't have to get hit in the head anymore. Instead, I talk to people about what it's like to get hit in the head, and, you know, just facing yourself. And that's the thing when I did that speech that people connect to, I think, is we all feel the same stuff. Doesn't matter whether you're working in an office, you're teaching kindy kids, you're getting in the ring, you know, we all feel the same types of feelings, just in different ways. We all think the same types of thoughts, just in different ways.
Yeah, so true. So tell me about when you found out, or how did you find out that you were sick?
It's funny, I just checked the date in my book. So the book that I wrote is called 10 Seconds of Courage, and it came from doing that speech. And you know, I just looked in the book today because my memory is still a bit shot from doing the chemo. So I'm like, what was the date I got sick again? Because it's about this time of year. So I knew it was about now. So June, July, it's somewhere in there. So unfortunately, my brother was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had stage 4 lung cancer. So I spent about 6 months watching him pass away in 2013. And that taught me a lot about my own fear and courage, like wanting to run away and it was very hard to go and be with him in that time. But I was glad that I had the courage to do it. And unfortunately, when he passed away, a couple of days later, I put a backpack on my shoulder, and I felt this tiny little lump just here. And I was like, what is that? It was like the size of half a marble. And there's a particular strike that we teach in karate where you put your fingers down behind someone's collarbone to make them sit down. So I just taught that strike recently. So I was like, that wasn't there before. I knew it wasn't there a few months ago. And I had this sort of chill run through me because he literally just passed away from cancer. And I was like, I couldn't possibly have cancer while he had cancer. Like, what are the chances?
Oh my God.
And I thought, no, but I knew, I just had that gut feeling. I knew that wasn't there before. I don't know what that is. And I thought I just started teaching in a new gym, and I thought I better get, it was like the first UFC gym in Australia, and I thought I better get, fighting shape to start teaching at this gym. And what I hadn't realized was I got in fighting shape, and then I started to look a bit skinny. So it sort of went a little bit too far, and I went, hang on, I got this lump here. Those promotional photos they just took, I've never looked like that before. Like I look a bit too lean. And a couple of things started going off in my head, and I thought I'd better go and get it checked. But this is where that 10 seconds of courage thing comes in. The last thing on earth I wanted to do was go and get it checked. Because what if it actually, like, then you find out again the unequivocal truth. We don't want to know the truth a lot of the time.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that true and funny? Because not getting it checked doesn't make it go away, but a lot of us, and you would not be the only one, a lot of us would put that off because they just don't want to know about it.
Yeah.
Fuck, wow.
It happens all the time. So, I got that, and I felt myself do the, don't go get it checked. But I just knew, and I was like, if I'm right, I didn't even know what it was. I just knew it was a lump, and lumps aren't good. I didn't know you could get a tiny lump near your collarbone, and that was Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had no idea what that meant. But I went and showed my doctor, and, I'd always been quite good about looking after medical stuff. Like I got that from my mum, like you go to the dentist, go do your thing, just as part of my discipline, I think, from training. So I went and showed my doctor, who I'd been seeing for a long time, who I trusted, and I could tell by the look on her face, not even what she said, that there was a seriousness underneath it. She knew what she was seeing. And she was like, oh, look, I'll just get you to go and have an ultrasound, blah, blah, blah. It could be A, B, C, D. But I knew that added to that gut feeling of like, oh, hang on. And I remember having the ultrasound, and the guy's like, oh, it's probably just an infection, you'll be fine. He was downplaying it. And and I went to get the next stage of it was getting a biopsy. I thought they were just going to do a little tick. And I was in there for ages, and they stuck about 15 needles in it, and it was much heavier procedure than I thought it would be. And I walked out of there going, oh, I'm done. Like, this is bad. So it took him a couple of weeks, and I had to use a lot of mindset stuff to kind of get through that time. And I decided everything's going to be fine. And it's the same process that I'm using now with, what's happening with the lockdowns and everything. And, you can make a choice to catastrophize it, which is probably my natural setting. Or you can make a choice to go, you know what, no matter what happens for today, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. So I spent a couple of weeks going, I hope it's going to be okay. And it wasn't. But at least I didn't spend that 2 weeks already going, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Tell us that bit, because it was a really powerful part of your talk, that moment where you were in the hospital and you kind of felt like you'd almost dropped your bundle.
See, the thing, that was a crazy time in life because my brother died. I was ending a relationship I'd been in for 7 years, and I got cancer all in 2 weeks.
Far out.
So all of these things have been coming, and I'd been bouncing off them and reacting in good and bad ways for about 6 months. And then that happened. The next 6 months, I spent having treatment and trying to just figure out what to do and going sideways anyway. And at the end of the treatment, the last chemo, it was 4 months into it. I was having a really bad day, like in my actual life, apart from having to go and get chemo. I was just having a really bad day. Things weren't going well. And I wasn't mentally ready to go and deal with this thing. And I went to get the chemo, and they put in a cannula rather than a needle, which is about the size of a popper straw. And, I'd always been a veiny little sucker, and they couldn't even get a vein in my arms because they'd collapsed all my big veins. So they're jabbing me with this drinking straw, and I wanted to punch someone. And I just burst into tears and I lost it. I just ran out of the room and I was like, nah, I'm not doing it. Don't care. I'm out. Like, I got really angry and then I got really sad and I was like, I cannot do this today. Like, it has to be another day. I can't do it. And they're like, but it has to be today. And I just ran down the hallway and I was like, why am I running and crying in a hospital? So I stopped. And I joke with people, it was like a movie, dead set. I slid down the wall and I was bawling, you know, like that real ugly cry.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my partner at the time very kindly was trying to talk to me and I couldn't do it. And, you know, the nurses were trying to talk to me and I just was like, just don't, leave me alone. Don't touch me. You know, like I was just imploding. And, you know, I think we've all had moments like that in life. We just can't take another step. You can't handle what's happening. So I'd handled it my best, you know, up until then, but I couldn't hack it, you know. So I just sat there for ages, you know, just crying and doing bargaining with my life. Like, well, have I had enough chemo that I probably won't die? Like, what are my chances? Do I even care at this point? I was starting to get quite down. Like, do I even care? What's my life going to be like after this? Because I had, you know, I was feeling really fragile, like very weak. And, you know, my hair had been falling out for ages. And you know, I was starting to realize just how sick I was. The first 3 months, I think I was in denial about quite how ill I was. And the chemo was making me very sick. So I think it was really starting to hit me what was happening and what my life might look like after that. Yeah, so I just had that moment of like breakdown, but, you know, I was very lucky to not just have my own voice programmed into my head, because my own voice at that point was like, who cares? You know, this is too hard for you. But I also had spent, you know, over a decade programming Sensei Benny's voice into my head. And in that moment, I was hearing things that he would say to me. And yeah, it was that 10 seconds of courage thing that made me get up. Like, I was like, I don't have, you know, I tell people there's a Navy SEAL saying, which is you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And that's the idea behind 10 seconds of courage. It's not be courageous all day. Be courageous for the next 6 weeks while you're doing this work project, or, you know, for the next year or the rest of your life. You get to be human in it. You get to take a little bite and just do something. And the point of it is that we get stuck. You get stuck in life. You get stuck in your mindset. You get stuck in bad habits. You get stuck acting in a way you don't want to act, or thinking in a way you don't want to think, or you need to lose a few kilos and you can't. You just keep busting out the Ben and Jerry's, like whatever it is, we all get stuck, myself included. But, you know, that idea of 10 seconds of courage for me that day was just stand up. Then you're not sitting on the floor anymore. So if you can just stand up, 10 seconds of courage, stand up. Stand up. You know, I was trying to get my legs to work. Then you're not where you were. I didn't know. I thought, okay, if I'm standing up, I can also run out the door. But it's just do something. And I started looking down the hallway in the hospital. And it looked like, it reminded me of the dressing room, like walking out of the dressing room. And so I was popping my shoulders thinking, like, it's not the worst thing. Like, you can do this. I don't want to do this. But, you know, that's that fight feeling, right? Like, I want to go out there, but I don't want to go out there. You know, like, this is hard and scary and pressure, and I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be. And I know it's going to hurt, and I know it's going to be really, really tough. But what happens if I don't do it? And I think we've all had that feeling of, what the hell am I doing before a fight? I'm wanting to run, and that's part of it. And I've heard some really great champions talk about that feeling of, like, they wake up in the morning and go, I'd rather do anything but this. I'm going to take up a whole new hobby. Why on earth am I doing this crazy thing? But, you know, I looked down the hallway and I was like, like, you know, this feeling. I had felt that feeling so many times before of, I don't know if I can do this. I call it down the chute. Once you go, you know, on like a water slide, once you go down the chute, that's it. You can't get back up. So I was like, okay, down the chute. And, you know, Sensei Benny used to say to me, it doesn't hurt any less if you close your eyes. The punch is coming, you shut your eyes, which all beginners do. I used to do this, like turn my head away and put my hands out. Like, if you shut your eyes, you get hit worse. It hurts the same if your eyes are open or closed. You know, if you face it, at least then you can deal with it.
Yeah.
If you shut your eyes and pretend it's not happening, usually the outcome is worse and you feel more powerless. So I you know, eventually 10 seconds courage again, I walked down the hallway and I gave them one go. I said, you get one go to put this bloody thing in, and if it doesn't go in, I'm out. And they went and got a doctor and she got it in first go. I was like, damn. You know, but I sat there until I was ready, and then I, you know, 10 seconds of courage again. Okay, all right, go, do it. I sat there crying until I was ready to do it. But, you know, sometimes when you've got big stuff that you don't feel like you can handle, you just got to do it one little bit at a time and then see how you go. One little bit at a time, see how that feels. Can I keep going, or do I need to back out of it? And, you know, that courage idea isn't about being fearless or about being reckless with yourself. It's just, if I take one step forward, do I feel steady enough to continue here, or do I need to step back? And, you know, that's about just knowing yourself. And thank God I did end up going through with it, because now I'm in remission and I'm still here, thank God.
Yay. How long have you been in remission? How long was how long was the fight, and how long, like, when did you get the good news?
I started treatment, that's what I looked up in my book today. It was I think the 23rd of July, 2013. Yeah, wow. And during that chemo process, they said to me, your tests are saying you're already in remission, but we have to keep going. So when I was having that last chemo, I was like, they said I'm already in remission. Yeah. Can you go out of remission? And there was no one for me to ask. I was like, will I just drop straight out of it if I don't have the chemo? Like, so that was, that was the whole latter half of 2013. And 2014 was pretty bumpy. 2015, early 2015, I got the chance to do that TEDx talk, and my life just took off from there, like literally overnight. When I was doing that, you know, when I was doing that talk, I did it just to share. I did it with the best of intentions. And then the next morning I got a phone call from a lady who, I had no idea where she was calling me or how she got my number, but it was a woman named Nanette Moulton from a place called Saxton Speakers Bureau. And I didn't know that there were professional speakers. I'd never been to a conference. I didn't know that that was a job. And she said, you know, I saw you talk yesterday, and I was very humbled by what she said about the way I spoke and why it was powerful. Yeah. And she said, would you like to do it again? And I went, yeah, it was really fun. Like, it was way better than I thought it would be. And she said, you know, would you like to do it for a living? And I went, what? Huh? And she said, yeah, you know, it's a great way to make a living. And if you just do it the way you did it, like, be yourself, don't go and become, in inverted commas, a professional speaker. Don't go get coached and fit a mold. Just go do that. Yeah. And I went, okay. And I spent the first couple of years getting the hang of it. And, you know, it's been 6 years now. I've been very lucky. Some of the crazy opportunities I've had. Closed the Google conference. Like, I've done all kinds of wild stuff. And I've talked to little kindy kids about 10 seconds of courage. Like, I've done so many things, and it's just beautiful, because I get to speak from the heart. I get to show people it's not just you who's scared, because people position me as, you know, a strong woman. Yeah. You know, that, oh, well, if you're brave and I'm not, I'm like, no. I was terrified. Yeah. But I had somebody teach me what to do with my fear. And that's what I love doing with people now. When I'm doing, you know, I do mindset coaching with people, and I've worked with everyone from, you know, people who are in the corporate world through to just, how do I deal with my 2 kids who are driving me nuts, you know. And one of the best things was Jess Miller, the one who got me the opportunity to do the TEDx talk. I did some real internal training work with her, and Sensei Benny would always ask me, what do you want? What do you want? And answering that is bloody hard. Who are you and what do you want? And I was working on that with Jess Miller, and one day it came out, you know, she loves nature. She's very connected to the earth. She's a bit of a hippie, and she was saying, you know, I want to be able to help nature and and we started talking about what that would look like. And the next thing you know, she got to the point of it, which was, I want to be the Deputy Lord Mayor of Sydney. And she became that at 32 years old. Wow. So through that conversation, we started working it, and then she ran with it, and, you know, she was able to really do something powerful with it. And that's the greatest, you know, the thing I'm so grateful to Sensei Benny for, is he really taught me how to what real power look like power within yourself. It's not about your armor. It's about how deep am I willing to go with myself? What am I really passionate about? And I'm really passionate about helping other people. Like, it's so not about me at this point. It's, you know, I just love watching other people make progress and get stronger and, you know, and do what they really want to do, what makes sense to them and what they love. And, you know, so my life now is absolutely brilliant. I'm so lucky.
What's your relationship with vulnerability like?
We're good friends.
Have you always been?
No. Spoken like everyone who's ever learned to be vulnerable.
Where did you learn? Where did your biggest learning come from? What part of your experience or your life shifted that?
Probably 2 stages. Sensei Benny taught me a lot about it. So he knew that people who are busy acting tough are really scared. You know, that you have more to hide. And I was busy hiding. And you know, he taught me piece by piece how to let go of that. And you know, I was saying to one of the boys I trained the other day, the thing that I found the hardest to do was we'd be warming up training, he'd put music on, we'd all be shadow boxing, and he would make us go in a circle. And then he would say, you know, Nadine, get in the middle. And he put me in the middle, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm in a shadow box and I'm going to do this. And he'd be like, dance. I'd be like,
that terrifies me. What?
Yeah. If you ask me to shadow box, skip, spar, you know, whatever the thing is, everybody's scared of different stuff. And it wasn't I was scared of dancing. I could dance in my house, I could dance in a nightclub, but it was all of a sudden, he calls it the nudist camp, where you're like, oh, like you want to cover up, because all of a sudden you feel exposed and vulnerable. And it's different for everyone. You might have someone who can dance in front of everybody, get in the ring and compete in front of thousands of people. But if you ask them to give a speech after the fight, then they feel uncomfortable, or, you know, or they feel uncomfortable with emotion, or they feel uncomfortable with asking for more money, or whatever the thing is. It's everyone has different levels of vulnerability. So for me, that was something in my 20s where he just used to turn me inside out. I'd be like, I can't, like, ask me to do anything, but don't ask me to do that for some reason. So he was good at help. And then he taught me how to laugh at myself, you know, how to laugh at my own vulnerability instead of beating myself up for it. He taught me, be easy on yourself, like, be a little bit human. It's okay if you feel like that. Everyone's scared of different stuff. So that was huge for me. And then coming out of being sick, which was incredibly vulnerable, especially afterwards. If you watch that YouTube video of my TEDx talk, I look okay. Like, I look fairly healthy and, you know, pretty fit still, but I was so weak. So I'd spent that whole year after I was sick saying to people, can you open this bottle of water for me? And getting looked at like, you're right. Because I looked okay, but I was really, like, quite weak. Like, I couldn't carry my groceries, you know. So it was a very humbling, massively vulnerable time, and I didn't know what to do with it. So coming out of that time, have you ever heard of Brené Brown?
Oh, yeah.
Brené. So she's got one of the most famous TED Talks in the world, top 5. It's called The Power of Vulnerability. Watch it on YouTube, people. It's amazing. And, you know, she's a social researcher. So what she's saying isn't her opinion. It's based in evidence and statistics, but she says it in a way that is funny and wholehearted. And that really changed my thinking that year after I was sick around what true vulnerability looks like. I already knew it, but it gave me a different angle, different lens to look at it through. So when I did my TEDx talk, there's a couple of lines in there that are a direct paying respect to Brené. In my own mind, I wrote it that way because I knew that, you know, Sensei Benny asked me when I was sick one question. He didn't ask me what kind of cancer I had. He didn't ask me if I was going to die. He asked me one thing, and that was, what will you do with this? What will you do with this thing that's happening to you? And at the time I had no bloody idea. But I tell people it was like a pebble in my shoe. I walked around for a year wondering, what the hell am I going to do with this? I don't want to be a cancer poster child. I don't know. I had no answers. But when the time came to do that talk, I thought, am I going to get up there and put on my armor? Because I used to be a home run hitter. Like, I was undefeated. I would walk into a room and expect people to listen to me. I was used to teaching, and I had a powerful energy, and I'm like, do I take that person out on the stage, even though that's not who I actually feel like right now, but it will make me feel safe in the moment? Or he asked me, what will you do with this? Or will I be who I really am, power of vulnerability, show my truth, and risk way more than I ever had before by being really honest? Instead of telling the good stories, I told the stories that didn't make me look good. I thought, you know, the hard lessons that he'd given me, instead of the, you know, the great stories about me and him and hanging out with celebrities and doing all this stuff. Like, great, who cares? The things that were most valuable, and that's why I call him sensei. He's not my friend. Your friends are there to cheer for you and make you feel good and listen to you and all that stuff. He's spent 25 years of my life being in my corner, teaching me about me, giving me the hard lessons, not just being there to you know, give me a drink and cheer me on. Like, it's a different role. And, you know, I try to fill that role with other people, of being compassionate but challenging. So in that moment, I knew that the thing I needed to do was go and give this talk and do it in a way that I never would have risked doing it before. But that was the thing. And that, you know, when Nanette called me the next day and offered me this opportunity to do it professionally, that was what she was pointing at. She was saying, you didn't get out there and expect everybody to listen what you had to say because you're special and important. You got out there and went, here's something that I really deeply mean. Here's something that I know is true from my lived experience, and I got the scars to prove it. You know, and that was the thing that allowed people to connect. And Sensei Benny had always taught me to invite people into my experience. So, like, don't just keep the photo for yourself and look at it. He always taught me, you know, if you're going to take the photo, show other people and tell them what it felt like to be there and what it smelt like in the air there, and invite people in so they can be part of the experience. And so I knew when I was on stage that if I was going to do this thing that was really vulnerable for me, you know, give the talk, and then a week before the talk, I decided to do the demonstration, the martial arts demonstration that they'd asked me to do a couple months before, and I'd said no. So I thought, a week before, I rang them up and I was like, about that demonstration you wanted me to do. You know, I said no because I was already fragile enough, vulnerable enough. It was going to be hard enough. I had short-term memory loss and no cue cards from the chemo. I was like, this is going to be bad. And I joke with people, you know, Dr. Charlie Teo, the neurosurgeon, spoke it for me. So, like, psych out, intimidated. You know, but I rang them up and I said, look, I can't come and give a talk about courage if I know what we call the truth under the truth. My truth that is private to me, that I think in my head that no one else knows, is I'm terrified, not of the talk, but I'm terrified that I'm never going to be who I used to be. I desperately wanted to go out there with that home run hitter energy, but I knew I couldn't because it wasn't true. It wasn't true anymore. And people have a good, you know, they can smell when someone's faking it. I can smell when someone's faking it. So I was like, I can't do it. I have to do it this other way. So I rang them up and I was like, okay, I'm going to do a demonstration. I'm going to do a wooden board break. And they said, great. When was the last time you did it? And I went, about 4 years ago. Hadn't done it in a long time. But
by the way, I can't take the lid off a bottle of water.
Yeah. So that's the truth of it. Like, when I'm, you know, when I'm inviting the audience into the experience and going, if you know what it feels like to put yourself out there, if you know what it feels like to take a chance when you don't know what the outcome's going to be, if you know this feeling, like, be in it with me. And they, you know, in the video, it looks like I start laughing.
No, it doesn't. It looks like you start crying.
Yeah, well, okay.
Maybe that's because I was already crying when I was. I was like, oh, good, she's crying too. I feel validated now.
It was overwhelming because I was creating this speech in my head, and it was only so last minute that I decided to do the demonstration because I knew I was too scared to do the demonstration. I just wanted to do something that made me feel safe. But I can't talk about courage if I'm playing it safe, because then I'll be full of it. Yes. And the one thing I didn't want to do when he said to me, what will you do with this? I didn't want to be full of it anymore. I didn't want to be posturing. I didn't want to be anything other than my raw, true self. So, you know, I thought about inviting everyone in. What I didn't picture was what was going to happen, and every hand in the place shot up, literally like, pick me, when you're asking a question in, you know, third grade. So I was pretty overwhelmed by the response, and it was in that moment I knew that everyone knew that feeling. They knew what I was talking about, like I'd hit a nerve. And you know, I won't tell you listeners what happened in the end. They'll have to watch the video. But
I know, right? I'm sure they will watch the video.
A pretty wild moment. You know, it was a wild moment in my life, and I can see the exact moment where that massive downslide that I'd been on turned into an upswing, and it happened on that stage in that moment. And it's not about other people clapping. It wasn't about whether or not I was successful in the attempt. It was having that moment like you do before a fight, where you decide to back yourself and you decide, you know, it's what I mentioned to you before, that I am concept, that knowing. I'd earned the right to tell myself I was someone who would rise to the occasion. The bigger the room, the bigger the audience, the bigger the pressure that was on me competing before, I used to do better. I used to rise to the occasion. So I knew through experience that was true of me. And I felt like I was never going to get to feel that again. I didn't feel like that was true anymore, because I'd run out of the hospital room when I was under pressure. So in that moment, I was like, you know what? I'm going to find out if I'm still that person, and win, lose or draw, because I can't control whether it breaks or not. I'm going to show everyone what it looks like to try and fail, because I wasn't used to failing, but I'd failed so much in the last year. I was like, you know what? There's no, like Sensei Benny said to me, there's honor in trying. If you don't have the guts to try, you never get anywhere. If you're so afraid of what's going to happen, you do nothing, you lost anyway. So I was cool with whatever happened. I'd made peace with it before I stepped out there. But, you know, I used to be able to break a board like that, like 2-inch movement. I hit that thing so hard, I cut my bicep open. I was getting interviewed afterwards by, like behind the stage. It was wild. We walked off the stage, and I walked down back through the backstage area into the belly of the opera house, and I got like a standing ovation from all the crew and everything. And I'm crying walking through the thing, and they're all cheering. And you know, and I sat down. I'm getting interviewed by a newspaper, and Paul, the student of mine, the big blonde guy that was holding the board, he was like, "Sensei," he interrupted, which is he wouldn't normally do. And he's like, "You're bleeding, and you have a big piece of wood hanging out of your wrist." I hadn't even noticed yet. He was like, "You have a big, like, you know, 2-inch splinter coming out of your wrist." I was like, "Oh, thank you, Paul," you know, and pulled it out, kept going. But it just proved to me later, I was afraid. I was really afraid in that moment. And I set my mind, like I can see when I change gears and go into who I used to be, but I was really afraid of what the outcome was going to be. I didn't know. And, you know, it's those moments though in life when it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be giving a speech. It's those moments where you decide to say the thing that you need to say to someone. You can't control what the outcome's going to be, but you're scared to say it, or you're scared to try the Zumba class, or you're scared to do whatever the thing is. Those are those moments in life that are so powerful, because you're giving yourself the opportunity to find out who you are. To find out what will happen if you give yourself the opportunity to create something different than what you have today.
I could talk to you for hours. Tell my listeners, before I prevent you from ever escaping, tell my listeners where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can watch that TED Talk.
So if you punch my name, Nadine Champion, or 10 Seconds of Courage, or both, into YouTube, you'll get the talk. If you want to be on my my little mailing list, I don't mail very often, but if you want to go on my mailing list, you can go to my website and download a free chapter of my book. It's nadinechampion.com, and that'll put you on my website, or you can send an email to info@nadinechampion.com, and I'll pop you on the list so you can keep up to date with what's going on. Coming very soon, I'm actually about to launch a group coaching short course. So anyone who wants a bit of that mindset coaching, you know, contact me or follow me on Instagram. It's Nadine Champion with an _ at the end, and you'll be able to see what's coming up, because it's exciting times for me right now.
Well, I'm excited. Thank you so much. I've just hung on every word today. It's been amazing. And also, let's just clarify that Champion was your real name.
I was born with it. I promise. I'm not a turkey. I didn't change it.
Talk about being congruent with what you were supposed to be in life.
I know, but it would have been, imagine I was really bad at it. It was extra pressure. I was like, oh no. But yeah, and I hear you, it took me 5 years to say out loud that I wanted to have a fight. So it's what do you choose to become? And that's what I would love your listeners to have a think about. Like, are you becoming who you mean to be, who you intend to be? You're getting the results you're looking for?
Yeah.
Or do you have more within you? Do you want to become something else? Because we have the power of choice. We have so much power. And I was very lucky to have someone in my corner helping me learn and understand that. And, that's the thing that I love to do with people now, is help them really understand just how powerful they are. And there's no time to waste. The moment is right now. So, I hope that some people can think about that. And I feel like our conversation isn't over either, so we should have another conversation soon, my friend, if you ever want to have me on again.
You will definitely great. You'll definitely be back, and don't worry, I will be stalking you somewhat.
Excellent.
It's been amazing.
Talk.
Thank you so
much.
much.
I was very honored.
You're welcome.
Thank you.